Zita, and I'm going to be presenting on basketball today, which is a super interesting sport as I've come to learn. I am doing a 19-week periodized training program for basketball performance based on a case study provided to me. And here we go. So we'll be doing a sport-specific task analysis, an individual analysis. We're going to be talking about program design, and then we're going to look at some videos and put the whole thing into practice. So this is a quote that you might find interesting. This is how I felt about it. Sport played by really tall people, possibly involving a ball and hoops, played on a court, no judges or lawyers, though I checked. I liked that movie, though, White Man Can't Jump, I think, or was it Basketball Diaries that I liked? Man, why did I have to get basketball? I hate basketball. So that's my reaction on Messenger to my husband when I found out that basketball was my case study. I knew very little about it going in, and I sure know an awful lot about it now. Basketball is a game of power, strength, speed, agility, and strategy. Our case study, Chris, is an NBA hopeful. You guys have this on the screen. I'll tell you a little bit about Chris. He is hoping to become an NBA player one day. He's been invited to training camp and to participate in the combine testing. He currently practices 5 days a week, has 2 games per weekend in mid-season, but he's currently playing in the playoffs, which will go to late March. He works at a grocery store 10 hours a week and is available for training starting on March 20th. Importantly, Chris is a guard and has been playing for a long time and knows he's talented, which is always a good start. Really quick movement analysis. Suffice it to say, basketball is a total body sport. It is multiplanar. It moves everywhere and very, very quickly in explosive actions as well as repetitive controlled actions like dribbling and guarding. Some major movement patterns: dribbling, shooting, passing, running, jumping, all the things we associate with basketball. And quite literally, all the muscles of the body are involved in basketball play and in virtually every movement of basketball, actually. In a basketball game, you can expect to see 1,000 individual movements in 48 minutes of play, which is roughly 2 movements per second. That is pretty impressive. That is a body that is moving very, very quickly and very frequently, which has a whole whackload of considerations that we'll look at right now. In terms of energy demands, it is 20% low intensity, 16.1% high intensity, and 65% intensity greater than walking, which is that lovely aerobic kind of zone, our oxidative energy system. So while it is definitely aerobic in many ways, the anaerobic components of basketball cannot be ignored, because when push comes to shove, the game is about scoring points, and scoring points happens in quick, explosive movements that are anaerobic in nature. So if we look over here, shuffle movements of varying intensities account for 34.6% of total body movements. Running of all intensities accounts for 31.2%. Standing and walking almost 1/3, 29.9%. And jumping, teeny tiny percentage here, 4.6%. But it packs a real punch, because again, that's where our points are scored. Energy demands, we are looking at 105 high-intensity runs of 1 seconds in duration on average, so roughly 3 minutes in the game. 15% of the game is spent in high-intensity activity. 60% of live play is actually spent walking or standing, which is interesting. Unless you're actually engaged in the full movement, you're not doing a whole lot. Mean heart rate of 169, or 89% of the pre-established mean heart rate max of the cohorts being studied. It exceeds 85% heart rate, 75% of live gameplay, with 15% of that in 95% of peak heart rate zone. What that basically means is we are talking about an intense sport in a lot of ways. The heart is exceeding 85% capacity, the majority of live gameplay. And blood lactate levels from 3.7 to 13.2, with an average value of 8.5. Here I've got a fun little cartoon that I think is worth reading. We've got a basketball coach on the ground with his laptop saying, "We've got 4 seconds left. Here's what I want you to do." And players whispering to themselves, "I hate PowerPoint," which is kind of how I feel right now. I think that when push comes to shove, basketball is is in many ways a game of instinct, which is why it's so important to train on that SAQ component, because a lot of it is just going to be neuromuscular memory. Physiological characteristics, aerobic capacity. It's important to note that aerobic capacity is important, but once you kind of reach a baseline between 42 and 54.3, which is that average that we see in the combine, then increases of aerobic capacity beyond that don't actually seem to impact performance that much. So while it's important to have a really strong base of VO2 max, working beyond to achieve a higher level than that average that we see really isn't indicated. Anaerobic capacity is a pretty big deal. Again, it's not a huge component of actual time spent, but it is a really important predictor of performance. Strength power is a really big deal. We do tend to see evaluations of squats, bench press, power cleans. Lower body strength is strongly correlated to speed and agility. And interestingly enough, while we do tend to focus on the squat and the bench press to assess lower and upper strength and power, the power clean has actually been studied as being more correlated to performance, and is something that I imagine we'll be seeing more frequently because it's being integrated more frequently into some coaching program plans for strength. Speed and agility, again, we've put a lot of focus on it because it is a really, really big deal. Research indicates that the T-test may be the most sport-specific in its applicability as it involves multi-directional movement. But what's interesting is there is no universal agility test that is done, which means that every study on the importance of speed and agility actually is hard to compare against each other because they're all using different metrics. Flexibility is a really big deal in terms of injury maintenance, but it is not hugely correlated with performance. And so it's definitely something that we want to keep in mind, particularly during that in-season play when we do have a higher risk of injury. And in terms of the body, we're looking at a body composition and body mass being the most commonly assessed factors. Guards are typically lighter and leaner than their forward and center counterparts. And height is, of course, very strongly correlated with performance success, but it's not uncommon to see the guards being the shortest of the bunch because, as we see here, a player's body size largely determines the position played on the team, which is strategic, right? Keeping the smaller players on the perimeter allows them to move quickly through and down the court. And so you want your speedy guys to be on the outside, and it's really important for guards to be speedy and accurate in their shooting, which involves elements of both anaerobic and power. Consideration for injuries, we're looking at 5.6 injuries per 1,000 athletic exposures with a frequency of sprains, strains, contusions, fractures, and lacerations in that order. 37% of injuries involve the upper extremities, and 54% involve the lower extremities, again, commonly affecting the ankles and the knees. Most likely injury sites are the knees, fingers, ankles, and shoulders. The lower extremities are, unfortunately, also correlated with being the most severe the most highly associated with severity. So when you do get injured on the lower body, the chances of that being a severe injury are much higher, which might have to do with the explosive dynamic nature of what the lower body is doing. Here's Chris's individual analysis. Chris is, to summarize all of this, shorter, leaner, and just quite frankly not as fast and lacking a lot of power as we can see in terms of his jump ability. But what he is strong. Chris has in an 18 rep to 12 rep performance on the bench press at 185 pounds. And again, his leanness and his lack of height shouldn't be necessarily seen as a negative because of his position, which is guard. We just have to make sure that his performance as a guard is as high as it can be so that those aren't seen as negative factors against him, which means that we definitely want to see that vertical jump increase, and we want to see his speed and agility increase as well. We just talked about strengths and weaknesses, so our training priorities are power, speed, agility, with a secondary consideration on total body strength and aerobic capacity. Let's talk about program design. We're going to talk about this relatively quickly. Due to the demands of the sport, we're looking at concurrent training. So we're not just going to focus on resistance and then do, a mesocycle on SAQ. We want to make sure that we're integrating all these elements throughout the training program. We are opting for a 4-day-a-week upper body and lower body split in order to maximize gains. We introduced resistance training right at the beginning of the program, and plyometric, speed, agility, and aerobic conditioning are also integrated throughout the program design. Now, generally, anaerobic and speed and agility are the focus of preseason, but because we're really trying to work on those components with Chris, we're going to integrate them a little bit earlier to make sure he's in peak condition going into camp. Resistance training is the primary focus and is going to remain the primary focus throughout. However, as the intensity increases and we're going to see a total decrease in volume, both for the exercises and in total exercise load. Plyometrics, they are very strongly correlated with increases in jumping height and power, as well as agility and peak isokinetic strength, and they've been directly linked to improvements in vertical jump. So they are a big deal, and we are going to see them integrated in phase 3 of our program, the strength phase, and increasing in volume in phase 4. Fun thing about plyometrics is that they're also correlated with conversion of type 2X muscle fibers into type 2A, which is something we definitely want to see. Speed and agility, again, a big focus for Chris. The volume is lower in the earlier phases to minimize injury, but we do increase that. And one way that we can do that is by integrating task-specific activities such as skipping rope and dynamic warm-ups. So you don't have to do like a whole section on speed and agility. You can use speed and agility components in various parts of your training plan. Aerobic conditioning is going to be integrated as well, if only to maintain that baseline, but also to see if we can't get Chris up to that 54 mark that we want to see for the average. Anaerobic conditioning is really physiologically demanding, and so while we are going to definitely ensure that we integrate it, it's not going to be a huge component right now because we will be seeing a lot of that during training camp. Flexibility training is there in order to maintain a lowered risk of injury. But again, it's not hugely correlated with performance, so we don't want to overdo it. And timing of your flexibility training is really important because some muscle restrictions can make it hard to maintain body positions that are essential to performance. Training cycles, 19-week macro cycle, and the ending with training camp coinciding at the very end there. We've got 2 weeks of recovery transition, 6 weeks of hypertrophy stabilization, 6 weeks of strength, and 4 weeks of strength power. Each of those includes a week of deloading at the end. Yearly breakdown for basketball looks something like this. We're joining here at the March-April, taking us through April, May, June, and a little bit of the preseason here with training camp starting up in early August. Recovery transition, not much to say here. It's really important. Some studies actually indicate 4 weeks. We're going to do 2 weeks because time is of the essence. Hypertrophy and strength. Here we're increasing muscle mass, increasing strength, and preparing the body for more specialized movements, doing an upper body split 4-day routine, dynamic warm-up, and combination of compound exercises and isolated stabilization exercises. We've got some speed work integrated here and some cardio and flexibility as well. This is what our hypertrophy prep phase kind of looks like. Not sure if you guys can see that there. But we see the speed and agility. We've got our warm-up and our resistance, 4 times 8 to 10 reps for a lot of these, or 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps as well. Strength phase, so coming into phase 2, we're looking at the integration of plyometrics. Plyos should always be performed before resistance training. This phase is more sport-specific, and explosive power exercises begin to get integrated, which better simulate the movement of a basketball player. So in that case, we're going to see some of those assistance exercises slowly phased out. Program remains 4-day split, but can be separated to 5 days if we feel that more recovery is necessary, and it includes a deloading period here. So we're seeing that we've got a decrease in reps, so 4 to 6 reps, and 4 sets to 3 sets. Some of these assistance exercises are staying at 3 sets of 8 to 10, but we'll be seeing those phased out. And speed agility components, and here we've got our plyo, jump and reach, box jumps, again, looking for not super heavy on the reps and more sets. Strength power is the last phase, and we are shifting focus here towards sport-specific skills with additional emphasis on plyometrics, speed, and agility, with a slight reduction in resistance-only exercises. So 4 weeks of progressive build, 1 week of active recovery before heading into that training camp. The intensity and duration here are really significant, so we need to be careful that the athlete is not overtraining, and we would recommend keeping it as a 4-day split or creating a 5-day split in order to accommodate the increased load. If an additional day is indicated, plyometrics may take on a day of their own. Ideally, though, we would keep it on 4 days because we do know that Chris works that part-time job and probably wants to have a life outside of training. So we'd like to give him some extra recovery days because recovery in this phase is a pretty big deal. This is what our strength power program plan would look like. Again, we've got a whole section here just for plyometrics. Over here on day 2 and 5, different plyometrics integrating, alternating. So your lower body plyo will be paired with your upper body strength and vice versa, unless you are doing a whole plyometric day. And that stays true for our strength phase as well. Just making sure that we're not overloading the body with those really demanding exercises. And we've got our SAQ movements down here at the bottom. And so now we're going to talk about putting it into practice. We've got some videos for you. We're looking at a push-up progression. Now, I opted to stick to the same exercise and show you how that exercise changes over the course of the periodized plan. We could have opted to do an exercise specifically representing each phase, but I think it's kind of neat that the push-up is able to actually act in every capacity. So we're going to look at the push-up first, and the push-up with elevated feet, bearing in mind that Chris is really strong on that chest press. I imagine that your typical push-up isn't going to be as demanding for him as other people. And so we're going to elevate his feet right off the get-go in that hypertrophy phase, moving him into a plyometric push-up and or a burpee in our strength phase, when we're starting to integrate those plyometric movements. And finally, in our power phase, we're going to move into a burpee with a box jump. So I'll be demonstrating and coaching those movements with Lorelei, my lovely volunteer, who's probably a lot better at these movements than I am, because I'm not going to lie, plyometrics are not my forte. So we'll have a good chuckle at Coach Zita attempting to coach movements that she's not really great at. And thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Lorelei has been kind enough to volunteer to be my client, trainer turned client.
Yeah.
The student has become the master. No,
I
the
love
student
it.
has not become the master.
Reverse roles.
It has not
Great.
happened. No, and she's going to punish me in my next workout for even thinking that. Actually, we are going to be taking you through a progression of the push-up, reflecting all the different phases of our basketball periodized plan.
Okay.
So as I explained to Lorelei, we're starting with phase 2 because phase 1 is a recovery phase.
Okay.
And in phase 2, we're looking at hypertrophy and at strength endurance.
All right.
So Chris, our client, is a very strong candidate. He is able to do many, many repetitions of 185 and on the bench press.
Yep.
And so we're not expecting push-up to be very complicated for him. We will start with a basic push-up just to talk about form and about function, how we can affect that push-up in terms of intensity.
That makes sense.
But then we're going to jump right into doing a push-up with elevated legs to intensify that movement a little bit. From there, we're going to move on to stage 3, which starts to integrate elements of strength specifically, right? Looking at maximizing strength. And in stage 3 in the basketball program, we start to integrate lower intensity levels of plyometrics. So in this case, we're going to start creating a plyo push off of that push-up, and we're also going to look at the burpee. And finally, we're going to move into our power phase, which is the last phase of the program before training camp, which is preseason. And in that power phase, we're going to take that burpee, turn it into a plyometric by adding in a low box jump.
I can't wait.
Exciting. So we're going to turn this over to Lorelei, who will start by filming me demonstrating the exercise, and then we will switch it over and I will talk to you about yours. Okay?
Perfect.
Cool. All right, so we are going to start with our basic push-up. Nothing too complicated here. We're going down, really pulling in the pelvis, squeezing at the glute level, making sure that our core is nice and strong throughout the movement. How you place your hands can impact where you are targeting a lot of that resistance. We're going to keep it at a normal under the shoulder base, hands pointing forward, down, and back up. Okay, because Chris is so strong, we would probably be able to do several repetitions of this, anywhere between 15 and 20, and probably 4 to 6 sets, depending on what he's wanting to work on. And it's entirely possible that that would do a whole lot for him in terms of intensity. So we'll take that straight in over here to push up with elevated legs, affecting the lever and intensifying the movement a little bit. Should be more challenging for Chris. So down and back up. Again, keeping the repetitions here nice and high in order to make sure that he is creating all the activations and muscles that we want to see, engaging in some hypertrophy and building on his endurance. So let's switch it over. Let's get you down into a push-up. Lorelai is going to adopt a nice push-up form, strong core, beautiful positioning. And when you're ready, Lorelai, go right ahead. Let me get you to tuck your pelvis just a touch for me, right there. Beautiful. I love when athletes do this so that I can actually see muscles move. That's actually probably good. We're going to move right into the elevated step, and what I'm going to get you to do is I will get you to do 8 of these with elevation. So we would decrease the intensity, we would decrease the repetitions because we have increased the intensity of the movement. Okay, so I will get you to do 6 if that feels comfortable, and then we'll move into 8 if you think that you've got it, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
I think you've got it.
Accepted. All right.
Look at those triceps, love it. There's not much to cue here because she looks great. You've got this one, give me 2 more. 2 more. Last one. Beautiful. We are now going to be looking at another element that we would integrate into that strength phase 3 component of our training plan. We're going to be doing burpee. Different people have different ways of getting into the burpee form. I like to start with a jump so that it's explosive from the get-go. We are going to try and integrate a push-up in that movement. We're going to do 4 of them really quickly, and then we'll let Lorelai kind of take over. Okay, so we're going to jump, up, out, down, and jump back together. Up, out, down, back together. Really regretting the mermaid shirt right now. All right, when you're ready, Lorelai, we're looking for a really nice strong body, explosive movements.
How many would you like?
Let's just do 4. We'll keep it nice and simple. Move through it quickly.
Okay. Push up. Okay.
Now, Lorelai is a little bit badass. She likes to integrate burpees with her chin-ups. We have some pretty awesome video of that. Give me one more just for the fun of it.
There, girl.
There we go. Nice work, Lorelai. Excellent. Phase 4, we are really focusing here on integrating power. We are looking again at that burpee, but this time we're going to integrate it with a box jump. Looking to really activate lower body speed, agility, and power in one movement. So everybody come in, our jump, push up,
Nice.
This is one of those activities, as you can see, that requires a fair element of coordination that I don't have. Hopefully Lorelai does a better job of it than I do. I find filming is weird all the time, no matter what. I really do. It's always weird. Yeah. My biggest fear is just hitting my head on the box. So make sure that when you take your time so that you don't, so that you know where your head is, because I was really scared of hitting it.
You ready?
When you're ready. Very nice. No, but you know what? What we're looking for is more just of the speed too, right? So I actually think that you could probably do this movement without integrating the push-up, focusing more just on the speed element, and would still get the vast majority of what we need for Chris specifically, because he is so strong in the chest And I think that that's also a safer movement pattern because you've got more control and you're able to see it better. So I like that variation a lot more. But depending on what the client's needs are, you can adapt it accordingly. Good job. Thank you for your help. Say hi, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Just because she likes to show off, but more because this is an alternative to what we're going to be doing in our power phase. But you can do power and integrate the explosive lower body, or you can do power and integrate the explosive upper body. So we're going to do a burpee into chin up.
No pressure.
No pressure. Very nice. So cool. So cool. Well done.